Many young athletes struggle with discipline, consistency, and accountability. But what many young athletes don't know is that something as simple as setting goals is scientifically proven to increase your consistency and your performance. I am thrilled to be working with the company Sports Hogs. It is a family-run company that specializes in making journals where you can track your process goals. Each journal, here's mine for basketball, gives you an opportunity to list your goals, how you want to implement them, and then gives you opportunities to not only reflect on goals in your workouts, but also reflect on each game performance over the course of the season. My favorite part of these Sports Hogs journals is the space where you as an athlete can list positive affirmations to keep yourself motivated. And if you need a little extra positivity, there are great quotes from legendary athletes filled in the journal. This family did an outstanding job creating resources for young athletes all over the country. And if you want to take advantage of this resource, visit sportshogs.com. That's sportshogs.com. Get a hand on your journal today. Greetings, Information Superhighway, and welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. If you are joining me on the day of this release, it is Election Day here in the States, and college basketball season is officially underway. This is an exciting time for a million different reasons. I hope you voted. I certainly did. My I voted sticker is currently on my child, who is asleep in the other room. But it's also time for me to focus on what I will call my day job, consulting with college basketball programs, working on scouts, doing my college basketball commentary. And that's where my focus needs to be, especially with the limited bandwidth that I still am dealing with post-COVID. So here is the game plan. We just dropped 17 awesome episodes. This one is going to be sort of a big theme-oriented episode. We will get into that theme in a moment. And then we're going to break for what will amount to my college basketball season and your high school basketball season. We will reconnect in the beginning of 2025 for season 2 of the Nail the Recruiting Process. You're going to look out for that in late March, early April 2025. I already have some guests that I'm excited to have on the podcast, and I really can't share much of it, but an awesome interview already planned that will be both looking into the future and retrospective with a new Division I head coach who is going to really walk you through their thought process for putting a program together so you, the young recruit, and you, the family, could get an idea of how head coaches really think in these sorts of equations. This has been a blast. I've been completely blown away by the positive feedback I've received from strangers who have come across this podcast. It's been extremely helpful to clients that I've been working with, which was my original goal for putting it together. But it's also something that I've really found gratifying because it's reconnected with me. It's reconnected me with the thing I originally was passionate about, running takeoverthegame.com, having podcasts, doing interviews. This felt like riding a bike. It was something I never forgot how to do. And I'm thrilled that you got to meet some of my guests and get to know some of my guests better than you would have. And I sincerely hope that not only did it help shift some generalizations about the recruiting process, but I also think that my interviews will help shift the impression that you have of coaches and the coaching profession itself. For better or for worse, the X's and O's of the game is a very, very small fraction of our jobs. And unless we're coaching professionally, and even then it's more managing than you think, we are managing personnel first and foremost. We are shaping people, we are building leaders, and that ethos is a part of the recruiting process. So what I want to talk about today is almost like an index. You get to the end of the book, and then you think about certain subjects and what were the big themes of the book. And if I want to go reread them and find them quickly, where can I find those things? So today's theme is truly about themes themselves. Over the course of my interviews, and keep in mind, I'm a data-driven person. That's how I got here in the first place, was data that started with the book and having these interviews to help make sense of it. Over the course of these interviews, I found 10 really important themes that I want to share over the course of this final podcast today. This one's going to be a little quicker than my interview podcast, but they're, in my opinion, the most important themes for you to remember as a recruit, as a parent, as a full family, as you navigate this recruiting process. And we're going to touch on each one of these themes specifically as we go through them. While there is no true order of importance, I will say that the first one is very intentionally first and the last one is very intentionally last. So let's dive in and let's discuss these themes. First one, you're good at basketball. Good for you. You proving that you're talented enough to play the sport is just the very beginning of the recruiting process to make the college team of your dreams. First, your attitude has to be a correct fit for the program that you want to play for. You have to show that you have an ethos of growth, that you're going to continue growing and getting better. You have to have a family fit where your guardians jive with the coaching staff. You have to go on a visit where you illustrate that you're a personality fit. You have to build relationships with the coaching staff, and you have to prove that you can make the correct decisions both on and off the court. People are not recruiting you just based on talent and athleticism. They're recruiting you on decision-making. And that's bigger than just, oh, if I'm a guard, can I hit my post? Can I make the right decision on a ball screens? It's also, when I'm off the court, how am I managing my time? What are my priorities? Obviously, you need to separate yourself from the competitive playing pool. You need to differentiate yourself. But the things that you do or don't do are being compared with everybody else in the pool. So if you're not taking initiative via emails and demonstrating your interest, somebody else might be doing that. So it's less about you making mistakes that are going to cost you, and it's more about you making sort of little blunders in your process that allow someone else that's doing all of the correct things to pass you on a coach's preferred list. And if you want to get an idea about what some more of those things are, I will strongly encourage you to listen to my interview with Coach Sahar Nusseibeh of Eastern Michigan near the top of the podcast season. It was episode 2. Because she talks about the little actions between the actions that really help her differentiate in her recruiting process, and explains it's less about you and it's more about the full pool. And when we put together our big boards, we are trying to find the people that check the most boxes correctly. If you don't check as many of those boxes, it's nothing personal, but there might be somebody out there that's doing more, and that's how coaches build teams. So you get noticed by being talented, but your talent is your cover letter. The rest of you and what you bring to the table is your resume, and that is how recruiting really works. On the subject of talent, here's something else that is really important to me. You can make up for a lack of talent in this recruiting process by being a glue kid. Not only have I seen it and experienced it myself personally, not only do I have data that shows that coaches are willing to take on high attitude kids if they will definitively be a culture leader on their team, and they'll be a little bit less talented. Not only do I have both of those things, but now I also have interviews with coaches with Power 5 recruiting experience who came out here and said their favorite things to do are recruit glue kids. Now, you cannot have a whole team of the glue kid, but glue kids find their way into higher offers than maybe their talent alone would afford them, because every team needs glue kids. Now, what does a glue kid do? Listen to the interview with Coach Aaron Kohlhoff at Sacramento State, who walks you through exactly what glue kids do to find their way onto high-level rosters. But I'll give you one very big thing that glue kids always do. Glue kids live the standard. I heard a number of coaches with championship experience talk about their programs being coach-fed and player-led. Glue kids lead. That's the rule. You cannot be a glue kit without being a leader that holds their teammates accountable. Next one. We talk about doing the work a lot. We don't really quantify the work enough, and that's on coaches to do a better job of showing recruits what this actually looks like. So let me make this really clear. The recruiting process takes a ton of work. And if you take shortcuts during the recruiting process, even if those shortcuts don't come back to bite you during the process, they will come back to bite you once you've arrived in college. There is no such thing as people who take shortcuts being consistently successful at the next level, and you need to embody that mentality now. You are emailing coaches more than you think you should be. You are reaching out to coaches more than you think you should be. You are visiting campuses more than you think you should be. And most important, you are lifting weights. You are doing conditioning. You're working out on your own, and you're holding yourself to the standard a coach would hold you to in your workouts more than you think you should be. Why? Because that's how champions are built at the next level. And the only way to truly get this process right is to start behaving like you're at the next level now. As your parents would say when it's job interview time later in your lives, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Everything you do in the recruiting process gives you an opportunity to dress for the job you want. Pick your clothes wisely. If you want to listen specifically for what the work actually is like, I cannot recommend enough the 3-part series that I did in the second half of this season. We started with Chase Skinkiss, who is an incredible strength and conditioning coach based out of Las Vegas that works with NBA athletes to this day. Then we had Tony Watson and Rod Middleton, the founder and owner of Pro Training Basketball, with more than 250,000 social media followers and one of the best online teaching resources you will find for basketball players. And they talked a ton about what the work actually looks like behind the scenes. And then we rounded it out. You want to talk about work? We rounded it out with Cornell Thomas. And Cornell Thomas's story is really important. We'll get into a big other part of the why later. But Cornell Thomas worked his way into a basketball scholarship without playing basketball until he was a junior in high school. He will talk about habits, and you should listen, because if he could do it with only what amounts to a year of real high school basketball experience, you can do it too. The next one, and this is a real important one for me because I am a gigantic dork. Your grades matter way more than you think they do. And your grades matter at every level. Yes, there is such a thing as a qualifying floor at the D2 and D1 levels, and there are national requirements. And yes, are there some programs that will take a chance on you as soon as you're a qualifier and all you have to do is be a qualifier? Yes. But there are also some coaches that disclose to me both on this podcast and in my research that they review your transcript and judge your transcript as if they are judging your ability to balance your time. So your transcript isn't just your grades. It's your ability to balance being both an athlete and a student. And if you're not showing them you could do that in high school when it's easier by every metric, how are they supposed to know and trust that you can do it in college? Are there exceptions? Of course, there's exceptions to everything. But you have to prove that you can keep your grades up to earn a coach's trust. Now, that's just at the scholarship levels. At D3, you have to keep your grades up to get into the school because there is no national requirement. You have to meet the admissions qualification requirements at each individual institution that you're applying to. This is why pre-reads are so important. And on the subject of that, I think that Mo Green from Hamilton said something super valuable in my interview with her. I want you to listen to the first thing so you could hear everything about academic requirements at the D3 level, but specifically, I'll call your attention to what she said about support. I will obviously fight for a kid that applies early decision for me, but when I fight for a kid, that doesn't mean I'm guaranteeing them admissions. I don't have the power to call admissions and say, hey, this is a kid that's playing basketball for me. You should let her in. And they say yes. You have to prove that you could do it. Your grades need to be on an upward trajectory. You need to be in challenging courses. You need to have a rigorous schedule, and you need to prove that your MO academically is not filled with taking shortcuts, just like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. Everything you do is part of your profile, and your grades are not exempt from that. Now, we're going to take a moment to stop talking about you and start talking about us, because here's something else that's really being hammered home to me between my interviews and my research on the recruiting process. Let's just say that we feel like 60 to 70% of our profession is really good and really well-intentioned. That populace of people is really worried about the bad coaches. Let me say it more simply. Good college basketball coaches worry about bad college basketball coaches constantly. And something bad college coaches do better than good college coaches, if you want to even call it that, they make promises that they know they can't keep because they're shameless about doing it. Those are the types of coaches that are promising you playing time, promising you accolades, promising you a feature role, a promise that no one in their right mind knows they can keep, because you have to show up on campus and prove that you mesh with the system and grow into a new role. That just is what it is. It is mission critical that you, the recruit, and you, the family, don't navigate this like the car salesman is selling you a car and everything they're telling you is going to come true. You have to treat this as an unknown once you take the next step. And instead of saying, who's the coach that's making me the most promises, you should be asking yourself, who is the coach and program that I want to navigate the unknown with most? For further insight on what that process can look like, listen to my interview with Cortland head coach Colleen Ames, who specifically talks about red flags during the recruiting process and unkept promises. Colleen herself, by the way, is a recruit that started at the D2 level and finished at the D3 level. And her insights on this are really, really important for any process. On the subject of finishing at the D3 level, here is one of the biggest themes that has come from my research. There is a growing fear amongst high-level Division III coaches that modern AAU programs de-emphasize D3 so much that players and parents think D3 is club. Division III basketball is not club basketball. These are high-level coaches, oftentimes coming from scholarship experience, and the ones that only have D3 experience have a ton of it. Trust me, I was at the D3 level for 10 years. This is also tremendous time commitment. Tremendous. If you are a Division III athlete, you should be expecting to put in 25 hours a week into your sport minimum if you want to crack the rotation. Training room, practice, strength and conditioning, film with coaches, individual workout sessions. All of those things are part of a D3 experience. A D3 school is a D3 school for 3 reasons. Smaller coaching staff, less financial incentive in athletics across the department, and regional travel. That's what makes D3 D3. And you need to be prepared to play college basketball if you play D3 basketball. Next, and parents, this one is really important for you. Many, not all, but many college coaches would consider ending the recruiting process of a top-tier recruit if their parents were over-involved. Now, how do we define over-involved? Coaches intentionally directing questions at the recruit, parents answering the question, coaches trying to reach out to the recruit to engage in like phone calls or catch up and hear how everything's going. Recruit doesn't pick up, parents call back, parents speak for the recruit constantly, parents are asking the questions, parents are driving the car. We have to understand and meet in the middle about what most coaches' goals actually are. Most basketball coaches like teaching and developing leadership skills, and they have found that their favorite place to do that is the basketball court, and that's why they coach. So you have to have a kid that's ready to develop those skills. If the parent is front and center, the message that's being sent is, my kid is not ready to develop those skills. I would strongly encourage anyone that hears this and kind of feels some type of way to listen to my interview with Amy Reed, who not only currently specializes in building better parenting skills for recruitable athletes, but also is a proven winner at the Division III level as a head coach and was a former Division I athlete. Other things to specifically look out for in this category. Parents, follow context clues. Let's say we're having a conversation on a campus visit and you're talking to the coach and the coach is talking back to you, and it's been a while since the coach has heard anything from the kid. You can trust that like 90% of the time, the coach is going to redirect the conversation and ask a very pointed, open-ended question to the kid. You need to take that as a cue and internalize it and let your kid answer the question, because that's one of those moments where the coach did that on purpose and they want to see how you handle it as a parent. Are you going to enable your kid to act, or are you going to act for your kid? Because whether you want to believe it or not, those type of behaviors transform a couple years down the road to your sophomore in college kid missing a jump shot and looking to you in the bleachers before they look at their coach for instruction. We enable our kids to act, and we encourage them to act for themselves so that they're ready to grow as leaders when they arrive on college campuses. It's as simple as that. Oh, kids, if you're nervous about what it takes to develop as a leader on your own, let me tell you this. You get rewarded every step of the way by taking more initiative as a kid. I've heard that universally from coaches, but I also have recruited players who I maybe wouldn't have given as much attention to if they didn't advocate for themselves. Vanessa Geralt is not a professor of this, but she may as well should be, because she modeled the way as a recruit, was a tremendous leader as a player, and she walks you through every step of why she did what she did as a player in an early season 1 interview with me. Now, we're hitting the home stretch. This is really, really interesting. I want to address some of the biggest myths here about personal play. The big one, in my opinion, the biggest misunderstanding that young athletes have about modern basketball is that they think they need to be elite at everything when they only have to be solid and consistent in their specific role. Forwards, can you set solid screens? Can you duck in? Can you have great hands? Can you finish with both hands around the basket? If you're a 4, can you pick and pop for a 3? Guards, can you push the pace in transition? Can you lock corners in transition? Can you get out of traffic with good ball handling? Can you hit open shots in rhythm? And can you make the correct passes with the correct hand to the correct person with the basketball? That's not complicated. Didn't say anything about a goofy foot finish. Didn't say anything about crazy English on the ball, 360 in the air layups. Didn't say anything about 11 move dribble packages. Can your game be solid? I don't want to say that everyone prioritizes the wrong stuff. I just want to say I was once a teenager and I looked at the wrong stuff. It's as simple as that. Make the decisions that I wasn't mature enough to make and focus on being solid and consistent. To learn exactly what it takes to be solid and consistent, you have to listen to the podcast that I mentioned previously with Tony and Rob, the pro training guys. They walk through exactly what it takes to be solid, both as a guard and as a forward, what the work should look like, what standards you should hold yourself to, and what a typical growth trajectory could be. Now I want to myth bust AAU. I think AAU is becoming a more and more popular vehicle because everybody knows that's when college coaches are most out on the road. We aspire to be on the road all the time during season, and we do our best, but it's also our playing season. So everyone focuses on AAU to try to get on the right college coach's radar. But I don't think enough people make the right choices for what AAU team they actually need to be on. So let me start here. When I asked 50 college coaches how important it was to them that their recruit played for an elite AAU team on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most important, the average response was a 4.25 out of 10. Statistically, these coaches do not care if you play for an elite AAU team. So if that doesn't matter to coaches, first of all, why? And second of all, what do we do about it? Let's address the why first. If you're trying to go to UConn or Texas or Arkansas or Bama, then you need to play for the top tier AAU team. But not just because it's the top tier AAU team, but because that's where the coaches are going to be watching. They're going to be watching the top tier AAU tournaments. If you want to play high academic D3, then you need to be showcased at the events where the most D3 coaches are going to be. Similarly, everybody else tends to fall in the middle, and coaches' jobs are to find talented players that are quote unquote flying under the radar. You always, as a coach, recruit higher. You aim bigger. That's how you grow your programs. You want to bring in someone that is more talented than the person you are replacing. That's not just how basketball works. That's how business works. So we know why. Now we need to know what we're going to do about it. And here's where you start. I spoke to more than 20 former college athletes and asked them to reflect on their AAU experience and what they felt was most important. Consistently, we boiled it down to 3 things. So if you choose to play for an AAU program, you need to check 3 boxes. 1, you need to know what you want. Do you want to be a D1 player? Do you want to be a high academic D3 kid? Is your mentality scholarship or bust and you're willing to go anywhere? Or do you want to try to find the best institutional fit for yourself? Big school, small school, all these things, you need to know them so that you can then, number 2, play for an AAU program that is led by a coach who has experience placing players to the places you want to go. And number 3, you need to play in tournaments and showcases where the coaches that coach at the places you want to go are going to see you. If you get either 1 or 2 wrong, then you can't possibly pull off number 3, and you need all 3 things to be seen by the right coaching personnel at AAU showcases. But let's just say hypothetically, you don't want to go the AAU route. That's more okay than you think. That podcast I mentioned with Cornell Thomas before, he didn't play AAU, and he was signed to a professional contract 6 years later. Julie Folks, current head coach at Marshall, former head coach of the national championship winning Transylvania University, told me in our interview that I can't recommend enough. If you want to just listen to innovative basketball coaching, I cannot recommend that enough. She told me that half of her senior class on that national championship team, half of her starting seniors, did not play elite level AAU basketball. It's okay to carve your own path as long as you're hitting on the big things that we talked about earlier in this podcast. Are you showing a proper growth trajectory? Are you talented enough? Is your attitude in the right place? Those things matter so much more to a coaching staff than where are you playing AAU and what other sports do you play? And with that in mind, accidentally, I just did a really good segue for myself, because the last thing I want to talk about is the recruiting process itself. The biggest mistake that you are making is that you are assuming there is one right way to do this. There is way more than one right way to get recruited. High-level AAU, regional AAU. That's choice. You could even choose no AAU at all. Multi-sport athlete in high school versus single sport focus in high school. You could do either. You initiate the correspondence or the coach initiates the correspondence with you. I've seen both things happen. You get offers from 8th grade on versus you don't get a single offer until halfway through your senior year. I've seen both things happen. You apply early decision or sign a national letter of intent, which is going to change anyway, or you don't. Anything can happen. Your process is exactly that. It's yours. Make it yours. Do the things that you want to do in your process and listen to your gut. Once you're done listening to your gut, listen to feedback, particularly from people that have gone through this process before. Listen to your mentors, even if it's hard when they challenge you. Guess what? You're going to have to take coaching at the next level. Follow their guidance, follow your gut, nail the recruiting process. What an absolute delight these last few months have been for me, navigating you guys through this podcast. There is plenty more coming. Until then, I wish you a fantastic high school basketball season. To all of my peers in the college coaching profession, I'll be watching and cheering you on. and probably doing a little bit of scouting to keep myself sharp. Just so you know, I'm still trying to come back. We'll see you all in the beginning of 2025. Take care. Be well. Best of luck. And of course, I'm not hard to find. Reach out to me if you need anything. That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you got something out of today's podcast. If you'd like to learn more about anything related to Nail the Recruiting Process, the book, my work, maybe wanting to work with me one-on-one, anything under the sun, you're going to visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram or at Jared the Coach on Twitter and TikTok. Both of those handles are just one word, no characters, no spaces. If you'd like to ask something of me directly, if you'd like a question that maybe you want answered on a future podcast, or if you have an idea for something we should talk about in a future episode, please reach out to me via email. I would love to hear from you. My email address is recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, then the word gear combined. recruitinggear@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to catch you next time.